He doesn't go away. In fact, he gets stronger every single time you say no to him. The story we have Rumi is a very famous poet, Maulavi in Iran as they know it. In his Mathnavi, he has a story of a snake catcher. It's a very famous story. I've heard it two different versions, so I'll give the version I like. There was a snake catcher who lived in a very small town. And one day he went out in the woods and the mountains to look for a snake. It was cold, it was winter, it was snowy. In front of him, and when he went into the mountains, was a frozen python. Completely frozen. He thought to himself, oh, this is the ultimate opportunity for me to proclaim to be the best snake catcher. He picks up the python, walks his way into town, and announces, all hail thee, all hail me. I am the best snake catcher. Look what I caught, a python. The people of the city come and they gather, they applaud, oh my God, mashallah, fantastic, good job. All of a sudden, the clouds part and the sun comes out behind the clouds. This hot, hot sun. And slowly but surely that python begins to melt. When it's completely melted, he wasn't dead, he was only frozen. He comes to life and the first person he swallows is the snake catcher. Rumi very beautifully places this snake as shaitan and the sun as our desires. And for a moment he thinks that if you think shaitan is frozen for that moment where you have defeated him, know that behind him there's a force that will make him stronger the next time he comes to you. So two things I want us to realize moving forward. Shaitan, number one, is extremely strong. And do not, my youth, do not put yourself in a position where you have to fight shaitan. If you are, mashallah, muttaqeen, alhamdulillah, you can fight him off, fantastic. But why put yourself through that? It's very difficult to fight shaitan. Do not put yourself in that position. Number two is this idea that once you've beaten shaitan, don't think he's going to go away. He's not going to go away. He's going to come back even stronger. But, and this is where the hope comes in, we have two voices in our soul. We're trying to identify the enemies on our path and trying to establish an Islamic life in the West. And we're trying to identify three dushmans. One is shaitan, one is our nafs, and one is our state of mind. The first is shaitan, and we're attempting to see how he operates and how we should operate against him. We have two voices, as many of you know. You know, when I was younger, we had these cartoons on television, if you guys remember, where every time this guy in the cartoon was faced with a decision, one angel would pop on one shoulder, and one devil would pop on the other shoulder. One will whisper what he wants to say, one will whisper what he wants to say. As funny as it was back then, the reality of it is that we have those two existences inside of us. Every time our youth are faced with a fork in the road, left is good, right is bad, those two voices come in and start battling. The moment that you ignore that voice that leads you towards Allah and you listen to the voice that leads you towards shaitan, that voice inside of you that leads you to Allah becomes one notch weaker. The example is very logical. Your mom asks you to do chores, as many of us do. Take the garbage out, vacuum, clean your room. She says it 4 days in a row, 5 days in a row, 6 days in a row, and you don't do it. After a while, she stops telling you. The phone rings, the person's calling you, the phone rings, the phone rings, the phone rings. After a while, he puts the phone down. Someone comes to your door, knocks on your door time and time again. After 5 minutes, stops knocking. The voice inside of us that's leading us towards Allah, if we don't listen to it once in a while, will eventually go away. And these individuals in society who have sold their entire soul for shaitan are those individuals who don't have one existence of Allah inside of them. Even though we understand for a moment that this need to worship Allah is a fitri need. It's on our human conscience. That Allah has blessed us with an internal voice to worship Allah. And there's countless examples to understand how and why. Just to prove this point for you, in the time of Jahiliyyah, when our Holy Prophet was trying to establish Islam in Mecca and Medina, We know that this force inside of us to worship Allah was so strong that the people who were ignorant back then used to create idols out of dates, khajurs, and worship these dates. And when they got hungry, they would break off an arm of their god and eat it. As ridiculous as that sounds now, that was their iman and faith and religion back then. Why? The inner voice to worship something was so strong, they had to worship something. They couldn't find anything, so they created something to worship. So this exists in every single human being, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. What ends up happening is that that voice completely starts to fade away if you continue to ignore it. So I'm asking my youth and my elders and myself, give yourself an opportunity for small victories. You're sitting or standing in front of somebody or something you shouldn't be looking at. And you tell yourself very firmly, do not look up, and you look down. And that person or that thing goes away. For a moment now, that voice of God inside of you has gone up one notch, and that voice of shaitan has gone down one notch. And you've conquered shaitan for that brief 5 seconds. Accept it, acknowledge it, pat yourself on the back, and tell yourself the next time that person's in front of me, it'll be easier to fight shaitan. The problem lies in the fact, and Mawla Ali, again, we rely on our Ahlul Bayt. We have nobody else but them. We don't need anybody else but them. They tell us everything we need to know. Mawla Ali has a beautiful hadith in Nahj Balagha where he begins to train his soldiers for battle. So beautiful. He says, look, when you face the enemy, do not look at the first rank of the enemy. Look at the last rank of the enemy. The moment you've looked at the last rank of the enemy, you've defeated the enemy. If you look at the first rank and say, oh, these guys are big guys. You know, back then in a war, they would send the toughest of the tough in the first row. And the biggest of the biggest guys are in the first row. Mullah is saying, don't look at these guys. Look at them as if you defeated them. They're done. They're gone. They're not even there. Look at the last guys. We have hurdle upon hurdle upon hurdle in our life. We have struggle upon struggle upon struggle in our life. Look, the Olympics have what's called a hurdle race. You've seen it before. There are two strategies. One strategy is to run right through all the hurdles and not jump over any of them. The second strategy is to make sure that you jump over all the hurdles and gain speed between the hurdles. The one who is victorious is the second strategy. Because you know that the moment that a person in a race for the hurdle race is knocked down by the first hurdle, he won't win the race. And the toughest hurdle is always what? The first one. Because the moment you jump over that first hurdle, you gain momentum, as they say. The second becomes easier, the third becomes easier, and as you watch these races, by the time you get to the fifth hurdle, they're flying over these hurdles, and they're in motion. Sometimes our youth and ourselves, one hurdle comes in life, and that's it. We wrap up shop, I can't do this, shaitan, come and take me. And we go into a corner, we become all depressed, we do all this, Islam's too hard, I live in the West. One hurdle. Islam is saying, don't look at that hurdle. Look at what the next hurdle is, and gain momentum after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. We have a whole philosophy in Islam. The reason why Islam is so beautiful is because it's not a weekend religion. It's not a religion of Shabir Jum'ah. It's not a religion of Muharram and Maha Ramadan. It is a complete system of life where it tells you everything from how to cut your nails to what finger to start in cutting your nails, when to shower, how to do inheritance and marriage and divorce, all these things on what to buy, how to buy, what to eat, what to wear, what colors are better for you to wear, all these things. No other system out there provides that. Islam does. Islam in its beauty, Islam has a very beautiful philosophy, and I think I've mentioned this last year or 2 years ago here in Sabah. I'll do it again. A beautiful philosophy on hardships in life. Look, nobody in this room right now, whoever can hear my voice, can sit there and tell me their life is free of worry or free of hardships. If, for the parents in the audience, you're worried about your children, or you're worried about your job, or you're worried about your mortgage. For the children, you're worried about your school, about your future, about your spouse.